Just when you were thinking that Canada couldn't look like any more of a joke, our House of Commons gets hacked. The United States ambassador to Canada indicates that it's Canada that has violated the CUSMA agreement. All that and more. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. CBC is reporting that the House of Commons was hit by a cyber attack from what they're calling a threat actor on an internal email. The House of Commons and Canada's cybersecurity agency are investigating a significant data breach caused by an unknown threat actor targeting employee information. According to the internal email obtained by the CBC, the House of Commons alerted staff on Monday that there was an information breach. It said a malicious actor was able to exploit a recent Microsoft vulnerability to gain unauthorized access to a database containing information used to manage computers and mobile devices. Some of the information obtained by the hacker is not available to the public, according to the email, including the name, job title, office location, email addresses, as well as information regarding their House of Commons managed computers and mobile devices. So all of the stuff that we normally pay security companies to keep private. Let me say right out of the gate that there's no excuse that you can tell me that I will accept. So I don't want to hear that they exploited something in Microsoft software. What I want you to understand is that your job was to keep that information secret. Your job was to keep that information from getting out into the public. Now we have administrative support staff for every political party, for people who are, coming very close to the halls of power. They are put at risk. Just like if there's no different than that than if the individual was sneaking across the border. So now not only is the Liberal government incapable of keeping our borders safe, they're incapable of keeping our cities safe. They can't even keep the federal government employees, the support staff, all the administrative staff safe. Because if this information wanted to be out to the public, you wouldn't have had it hidden away in the first place. Clearly, this information in the wrong hands can be utilized and exploited to threaten, as the term from the article says, threat actors, to put the individuals whose name, address, telephone number, all that other stuff that they now possess at risk. They can compromise that person who works in the federal government's House of Commons, which is truly the only representation of the middle class that Canada possesses. It is the very representation of the democracy in this country, the House of Commoners, the building for the regular people, the House of Commons. It has been violated by somebody hacking in because the individuals that want to be looking after this country don't seem to think that security matters. They don't believe that it matters in our police force. They don't believe that it matters in our borders. And now they don't believe that it matters in the very servers that are storing information that it can then be exploited to put the people who are trying to do the job in a compromising position, and that's being kind. I mean, this makes us look so weak. And I, for one, am tired of the world just thinking that Canada can be slapped around without any repercussions, that our very federal government, the very halls of our House of Commons can be violated at will, and they want to blame Microsoft for it. This is embarrassing, and that's being kind. I would remind you that all links will be in the description. Global News is reporting they had an exclusive interview with the American ambassador to Canada, whose name is Pete Hoekstra. And Ambassador Hoekstra is indicating that Canada has put tariffs in retaliation to the American tariffs on non-CUSMA items. However, Canada has gone ahead and put retaliatory tariffs on products that are supposed to be protected by CUSMA. The U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, says Canada is jeopardizing the future of Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, also known as USMCA, on free trade due to Canada's counter tariffs on certain American products. Canada is the country that has pulled the rug out from under the USMCA, Hoekstra said in an exclusive interview with Global on Tuesday. They also started putting tariffs on CUSMA products. We haven't done that, but Canada has decided that's fair game. We will call into question CUSMA. Okay, I know that I tell you the Liberal government has no diplomatic bone among them, and we can see that this is the case. Right now, it's coming to the forefront. The ambassador of any country is known as the diplomatic service. So to have the ambassador, not the trade negotiators and not Donald Trump's tweets and any of that kind of, or his truths or whatever it is that everybody likes to make fun of him for, something that he is absolutely paying attention to, by the way, the ambassador to the country from the United States sits down with a media outlet inside of Canada, not talking to the ambassador, not talking to Mark Carney, but just says publicly that Canada has violated the USMCA. Canada has violated the CUSMA agreement, which is the same agreement, just depending on which side of the coin you want to say the statement from. Publicly out loud in a news outlet. This only indicates that something is coming. Now, what can we be looking at? Well, I know there are people out there that believe that Mark Carney is intentionally destroying the trade negotiations for some agenda that he has secretly hidden between him and some friends of his in Europe and some friends of his in Asia. But let's just leave that aside. Let's look at something we can say for certain, something we can see that's concrete. The ambassador comes into your country and makes an accusation out loud that you have violated a trade agreement with that particular country. And then you already have all kinds of trade issues going on with that country. So they come forward and they say, well, that 85% that you claim is covered by CUSMA, we're no longer going to be honoring because you're the one that ripped the agreement right out from under us. Canada is the one that's violated the situation. Canada is the one that has brought this onto themselves between their retaliatory tariffs and violating the CUSMA agreement. So what can we take away from this? Will Donald Trump do this out of spite? No. Will he say to himself, I get 85% of these products coming out of Canada? How many of those manufacturers have been able to be set up inside of the United States and are ready to go? How many of those 85% of products are ready to have an American-based competitor within the next 60 days? When he has that information, he will decide whether or not he's going to tear up the CUSMA agreement and then take his time to have the court decide through the WTO, the World Trade Organization. But it won't matter by the time the World Trade Organization hands down a ruling. No matter which way it is, the clock will have run out. However, Canada is not prepared to all of a sudden have the 85% tariff or the 85% products that are tariff-free to all of a sudden be putting on tariffs because Mark Carney isn't trying to prepare anything. There's no shovels in the ground. We lost an entire summer without doing any kind of new infrastructure investment. No way are we taking, we're not trying to figure out ways that we can, entice other automakers to come in and start up Canada-only vehicles. I mean, the list of things we haven't done, I could go on for an entire video. What I'm trying to get you to understand, what I want you to see with eyes wide open, is that the Americans have sent the ambassador into a media outlet and made a claim out loud. Diplomatically, that's firing a shot. Diplomatically, that is starting trouble. Now, all we have to understand, all we have to know is how many in the last 90 days of these companies have managed to finally get all of the manufacturing into the United States, or other companies have come in targeting Canadian products that are being sold into the United States, saying we can do that because we're in a position we can make that here in Canada or in America and let that product die on the vine. Well, we're going to find out here pretty quick, but I tell you that this is a large move. This is a big deal. Because, and I get that the media and the far left in Canada doesn't appreciate that they're trying to make it into some sort of, high school stuff, elementary school stuff. But those of us that understand what this actually is saying are trying to let you realize that this is an important step and that from where we stand, we can see that something has to give one way or another. What will be the next moves? What will happen in the next 60 to 90 days? That's questions that will yet to be answered. But I tell you straight that this is an important announcement and that it does indicate that perhaps they're going to be tearing up CUSMA long before July 1st of 2026. Regular viewers of the Canadian Shield know my position on polling. I don't put a lot of stock into polling, because I understand the ins and outs of polling, because I understand it from the mathematical side and also from the marketing side. I understand which ways that the polls are manipulated. And everybody puts a lot of stock into the question, but it's the answer choices that they give you that really can lean the poll one way or the other. And The question can absolutely be manipulated to turn the answer in the way that the poller wants it to happen. Of course, if we just ignore all of that, if we just ignore my comprehension of that, and we simply look at the way polling worked with the Liberal government in the last 4 or 5 months, we can see that it just depends on which way the wind is blowing. It depends on your particular mood. It could change from Monday to Tuesday. And so I don't really cover a lot of polling, but the National Post and Leger did a poll recently. And I think it's important because it's something that Canadians need to be discussing as the EV mandate is creeping closer and closer with every, passing moment, right? We're into we're creeping up on 90 days until the Liberal madness starts to be enforced onto the very same car dealers that the Liberal government is trying to entice to stay in the country because Donald Trump wants to move them all 100% into the United States. So it's something we have to talk about. Leger and the National Post did a survey over the last couple of weeks talking about politics, government, and performance and key national issues. And one of the questions that came up in the poll was the EV mandate that's coming down the pipe. And their results are a strong majority of Canadians believe that the federal target to prohibit the sale of new gas-powered vehicles by 2035 is unrealistic, while only 1 in 4 Canadians finds it realistic. Skepticism is high amongst conservatives and those 55 and over. Conversely, optimism is somewhat stronger among Liberals and the NDP, which really there is no they're the same party. That's how the Liberal Party got a lot of their swing votes, because they took everything that Jagmeet Singh tossed into the trash. When asked whether EV targets should be mandated or rolled back, 71% said it should be rolled back due to the high cost and implementation. Less than a third, 20%, support keeping the mandate in place despite its challenges. Even among Liberal voters, a majority, 60%, oppose the current policy. Give you my 2 cents on this. I would just surmise it in a couple of ways. The article goes, it's less than a third of people who believe that, and yet in reality it was 20%, so that's a fifth of people. But you can see how they try to play on the words to make it seem like it's not as severe as it actually is, because they have a bias toward what they want to actually happen. Further, it's easy for people who live in urban areas, who tend to typically be NDP or Liberal, to talk about not having a reliable car because they have a reliable transit. And they know that having a car in those areas is oftentimes worse than it is better, because parking and all the rest of that. By contrast, people who live in the suburbs and people who live outside of the suburbs, they rely on their car to get around in their day-to-day. So it's apples to oranges when you ask, conservative versus Liberal, because people that live outside of the tight urban areas tend to vote conservative. But let me leave my bias aside. Let me just take a neutral third-party standpoint. Here you have and here are the indicators. You got a country who, over the last few years, has refused to buy electric vehicles. The manufacturers inside of that country have shut down the manufacture of even electric delivery vehicles in a time when everybody is getting things delivered to the door. There's no market for an electric delivery van. On top of all of that, you have the United States of America actively cajoling and courting these very same manufacturers to come into the United States 100%, where they don't have any EV mandates. And you want to tell yourself that you can force the people selling the cars, because that's actually what the mandate says, that every car dealer, every car lot in the country has to have 20% of their stock as electric in year one, working its way up to 100% of their stock. That's just not a good business model. No matter where I land on the spectrum in there, those indicate that this is a bad financial idea, because the people don't want it. The manufacturers are not really making it. and yet you're forcing it down their throat nonetheless. I thought Mark Carney was supposed to be a financial wizard guy. I thought he was supposed to understand market pressures and marketing and how you give the people what they're looking for, not the other way around. Maybe he feels that if you give people no other option, they will have nothing else to do, and they will just bend the knee. They will bend their neck and say, oh, let me do whatever the mighty Liberal Party demands, no matter how much I hate the idea of it. I mean, I'm just speculating. But I can say with absolute certainty that if you just take away all the emotion and all the different feelings that are being torn in and sewn into this particular conversation, and you look at the business model 100% only, you can see that it's a horrible idea. Speaking of targeting people's free rights and the targeting of free enterprise, the Language Police in Quebec, Canada's only secret police that I am aware of, the people whose entire mandate is to target people and individuals that make signs and communicate in a language other than Francophone, other than French. And apparently it's gotten so bad in the province of Quebec, it's gotten so terrible in the city of Montreal that they're not even sure what the word French is or what French words happen to be. Because the other day they targeted a restaurant over the word burgundy. Quebec language watchdog backtracks on pub sign it deemed too English. In its second high-profile reversal in recent months, Quebec's language watchdog has backed down after trying to get a well-known Montreal pub to change its outdoor sign. The Office Québécois de la Langue Française had instructed Pub Burgundy Lion to add French language to its sign because burgundy, is an English word. Following a public outcry, however, the language office now says that further analysis shows the pub's signage does, in fact, conform with Quebec's language rules. First of all, if you don't understand that the word burgundy comes from Burgundy, France, that it's not about the color is named after the particular shade that the grape creates, and that for the most of history, the French royalty had burgundy because that was so rare that only the royalty could wear it, from the grape that they grow in the region of France called Burgundy. You're running around targeting companies because you don't even speak the French language yourself. That is really, really bizarre in my mind. The idea that you don't appreciate that probably 30 to 40% of the English language in its current state is rooted in the French Latin, as the French for a long time were the overlords, the oppressors of the English country, of the country of England, starting in about 1066. Perhaps that should have been covered in your orientation when you, instead of running around fixated on attacking people because they don't speak the same language as you do. The discrimination in that law, the hate in that law. I don't understand how come it is that people are not more upset about the outright targeting of a minority by the very oppressive, privileged government that then turns around and says, we don't care, Alberta, give us all your money. And they don't speak a lot of French in Alberta. You can be sure of that. They speak some, but not a lot. But the minority English speaker in Quebec is not protected by any of this woke nonsense that runs around the country. And I find that to be very, very distasteful. There is only one way to achieve utopia when it comes to the way people are treated. You must apply all rules equally. If you feel that the minority of anybody should be protected and looked after, then that holds true for the English speakers of Quebec, who are targeted on a daily basis for ridiculousness like this. And believe me when I tell you, had they not had an outcry, had they not been, raised the alarm, those police, those language police, Canada's only secret police, would have not only come after that business and tried to shut it down and tried to take it over, but whoever owns the business, they would have went after their house, they would have went after their land, they would have went after their car, they would have went after their bank account, they would have taken it all under the idea that you're making money off breaking the law. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. All of this happens with the full awareness of the Liberal Party, the ruling government in Canada, because most of them come out of Quebec. And they are all aware of the situation, of the targeting of the minority speakers in Quebec. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.